Ever since Nintendo announced the revival of Star Fox, I've been fantasizing about which of their other dormant series could make a grand return on Switch 2. And more importantly, what new games in each franchise would even look like in the modern day. For the purposes of this video, I'm defining a dormant or dead series as anything that completely skipped the Switch generation. Though, you'll find that most of the games that we're going to be talking about today have been gone for way longer than that. But without further ado, let's get into it. The Kid Icarus series is one of Nintendo's most fascinating to me. Beginning with a bang in 1986, it quickly became a defining title for the NES. The main character of the game, Pit, who also went by Kid Icarus at the time, even appeared as a staple character in Nintendo's Captain N TV show. The game got kind of a niche sequel in 1991 and promptly disappeared for the next 17 years. From what I've seen, there really wasn't much demand for the series' return within that time frame. It was just kind of looked at as one of those old NES classics that didn't really have a place in the modern day. But there was one man who became very interested, and thankfully for us, his passion would revive Kid Icarus and bring us two of the greatest games of all time. In 2008, Masahiro Sakurai's Super Smash Bros. Brawl was released with a ton of new and exciting characters. Sonic the Hedgehog, Solid Snake, King Dedede, Olimar, Charizard, and of course... who the hell is that? They included a reimagining of Pit from that dusty old NES game. Oh, but Ridley was too outlandish? We don't really think about it now, but Pit really was the weirdest inclusion in Brawl. But all that effort that Sakurai put into Pit's fresh new redesign fully paid off when Nintendo president Satoru Iwata approached him to make a game for the 3DS. Sakurai chose to completely reinvent the Kid Icarus series and create an on-rails shooter starring Pit. And finally, 25 years after the last game in the series, Kid Icarus Uprising was released to critical acclaim and solid commercial success in 2012. Nintendo had a hit franchise on their hands, so what did they do with it? Absolutely nothing. Sakurai, it's back to the Smash development dungeon for you. And here we are 14 years later without so much as a remake. I think the problem with this series is that Nintendo is hesitant to take it away from Sakurai, since his brilliance is what made Uprising so incredible. But at the same time, he's just one guy. As outlined in his YouTube videos, the man only works on one project at a time with very little overlap at the beginning and end of production. With his work on 2.5 Smash games as well as Kirby Air Riders since then, there just wasn't enough time for him to return to the series. And assuming he's now working on Smash 6, it could be 2028 or 2029 before he would even get the chance to direct Kid Icarus again. That is, if he even wants to. As much as I hate to say it, the best bet for this series' return is Nintendo handing it off to a different development team. Based on the credits of their most recent games, it's safe to say that they're kind of restructuring development internally. So if they were to develop a hypothetical Uprising follow-up in-house, it's hard to say who would be in charge of it. But looking at their development partners and subsidiaries is an entirely different story. Earlier this month, we discussed why Metroid Prime may be taking a back seat at Retro Studios, and if that's true, I think they'd be a perfect team for Kid Icarus. It's got that Western appeal, some quippy dialogue, and overall, just seeing the beauty of Prime 4 translated to Skyworld would be a real treat. I also think that Next Level Games could take on the project, but chances are they're still working on Luigi's Mansion 4. But I think their sense of style and comedy would translate over similarly well. And now I'm sure you're wondering, okay, but what would a new Kid Icarus game even look like? Well, I'm picturing something very similar to Uprising in that it's split between on-rails sky gameplay and on-foot land segments. I think it's possible they could give Pit a wider range of motion, finally implement twin-stick controls, and maybe even add in some floating islands. I thought it would be cool if during the flying levels you could land on these to seamlessly transition into on-foot segments. Going back and forth like that would be a really fun way to advance the format formula established in Uprising. As for the storyline, I think it would be fun to remove gods from the equation almost entirely. At the end of Uprising, Palutena and Viridi debate the morality and worth of human beings. I think it would be interesting if the inciting incident for the story was that the gods began disappearing, and as they do, humans start attempting to recreate angel technology. You could have those floating islands I mentioned earlier be man-made bastardizations of Skyworld's creations housing angel-inspired military equipment. Pit's journey would be attempting to figure out what happened to the real gods and trying to keep humans from self-destruction as they play God. A cool enemy idea I thought of would be like mechanized man-made angels that look vaguely similar to Pit. You can only imagine the banter that they'd have. The overall theme would be an extension of Viridi and Palutena's debate, as the setup would highlight humanity's greed. I'm just spitballing, of course, but there are a million different ways this series could go. And thankfully, I think Nintendo knows that. This is, in my opinion, one of their most likely series to be revived now that we know that Star Fox is releasing next month. And in this era of IP expansion, Kid Icarus has just the right amount of charm and general recognition to prove very profitable for Nintendo. However, I'm not so sure I could say the same thing about our next series. Look, I know. You probably clicked on this video thinking, why is Ice Climber in the thumbnail when there's only one game in the series, if you can even call it that, and it's 41 years old? Well, I agree with you. There is no realistic scenario where Ice Climber is coming back, but I have an idea, so I want you to stick with me and kind of hear me out. For those of you that haven't played the original, Ice Climber is an NES platformer where you scale a mountain vertically in an attempt to recover your stolen vegetables from the Great Condor. Ice Climber has two things that make it unique, the first of which is the vertical progression, which sets it apart from your traditional left-to-right platformer. But the second thing, and what you likely know it for, is Popo and Nana being a duo in Smash Bros. They were adapted in Melee to represent the old era of co-op gameplay, as it was, to my knowledge, the only platformer from the NES era that could have two players on screen at once. If I'm wrong, please give me a history lesson in the comments below, but the point still stands that verticality and co-op are the two most important things to this game's identity. So when adapting that for the modern day, I think the solution is pretty obvious. Couch co-op games like It Takes Two and Split Fiction have absolutely blown up in recent years, particularly with more casual players. And in turn, they've created a massive market that Nintendo has yet to fully tap into. I think this genre could translate very well into a modern reimagining of Ice Climber. Popo and Nana would be controlled by two players either locally or online. The setup could be similar to a Donkey Kong Country game. We see Popo and Nana finally finish collecting all of their vegetables as they sit back and relax in their little igloo home ready to eat after all their hard work. When suddenly, the Great Condor swoops in and steals their sack of food. As it flies away, we see it dropping carrots and eggplants across an icy landscape as it ascends higher and higher towards the top of the mountain. Nana furiously drags a reluctant Popo after it as the game begins. The game would play sort of like the snow globe level in It Takes Two. I think. I haven't actually played It Takes Two, but the way that that game looks is the way that this hypothetical game would play. And that it would still have a clear focus on Ascension, but things would be a bit more spread out. They could use their grapple hook thing from their Smash Up B as a way for the two of them to help each other out as they make their way through the puzzle platform gameplay. I see this as a smaller Nintendo release, somewhere between $40 and $50, with a smaller team behind it, since reviving a series like this would be a pretty big gamble. But the fact is, if it's represented in Smash, the game's gonna sell. And regardless of where Nintendo would take the series, maybe as a more traditional platformer, a roguelike, or something else entirely, it feels like they're just sitting on money. So even if it's unlikely, I think an Ice Climbers reboot would be a decently modest success. Although, you could make the argument that this next franchise is even less likely to get a new game. Earlier this month, we talked about how poorly handled the Star Fox series was, but the mismanagement of Chibi Robo makes Star Fox look like Mario Brothers in comparison. The first game in the series released to moderate success and over time developed a cult following of sorts. But when you look into its subsequent releases, you start to see why the franchise never really made it big. Walmart exclusive, only released in Japan, small-scale eShop spinoff, a 2D platformer for some reason. The original Chibi Robo is a great game, but the developers, Skip Limited, just never really knew what to do with the series. And as of 2020, the company's officially shut down. The Chibi Robo IP is now co-owned by Nintendo and Bandai Namco, two companies that, to their credit, have a very close working relationship and could theoretically revive the series on Switch too. In August of last year, Chibi Robo was added to the NSO expansion pack, which in my opinion may have served as a testing ground to gauge interest in a new entry. Furthermore, I think that after Yoshi and the Mysterious Book, Goodfeel in collaboration with Bandai Namco would be the perfect team to take on this project. They have a knack for making beautiful looking, quirky little games, and I'd really like to see what they could do outside of the realm of 2D platformers. That said, the most important part of developing a new Chibi Robo game is ensuring that it plays like the original. No 2D platformers and no downgrades. I just want the little guy to make people happy and talk to toys while doing household chores. Where the previous two franchises we've discussed could stand to have a fresh new take, Chibi Robo demands a return to form. And really, it's a testament to the quality of the original game that instead of asking for change, I'm begging for more of the same. And I want to stick with that theme as we walk into our next franchise. The Mother series is one of the most influential ever released, and you may think that's me overblowing it because maybe you personally haven't played the games. But trust me when I say that Earthbound is your favorite game developer's favorite game. Undertale, Amori, Stick of Truth, Night in the Woods, Celeste, all of these games have some part of the Mother series DNA baked into them. But here's the problem. These games are getting old. Mother 3 is 20 years old, and copies of Earthbound have soared to make it borderline unplayable through legitimate means. I know every fan out there wants their favorite franchise to get a new entry, but before we can even think of Mother 4, it's critical that we find a better way to preserve the original trilogy. So here's my unrealistic suggestion. In 2029, the series will turn 40 years old, a huge moment for all those the game inspired. And I think the best way to celebrate its legacy would be with a triple pack release of all three games fully localized and remade called the Mother Collection. And I know I might get killed for saying this, but I think that putting all three games in a style similar to Link's Awakening would be awesome. Not only so that us fanboys can stop screaming for Mother 3 to be released in the West, but also because there's a whole new generation of creatives out there waiting for that spark of inspiration. A spark that, historically, this series has provided. Beyond that, I think it would better contextualize the inclusion of two Mother reps in Smash. The fact that Ness has been here since day one will drive sales quite a bit on its own. And since the Mother 3 localization has become a meme even outside of Nintendo circles, that could certainly help as well. I will clarify that this is pretty much just wishful thinking. I don't think Nintendo would ever do anything like this realistically. But with that said, the very, very least they could do is drop Mother 3 fully translated on Nintendo Switch Online. I think we deserve it by now, okay? But that's enough of the copium. Let's get back on track with a handful of series that are pretty much guaranteed to come back. Punch-Out is the best game on the NES. You can debate me in the comments if you want, but trust me, you're not gonna change my mind. And that's why when Next Level Games took a crack at the series back in 2009, they didn't have to change much. They just updated what was already perfect so it could be enjoyed by modern audiences, thereby perfectly setting up the future of the Punch-Out series, which doesn't exist. Now, while it is odd that we haven't had a new game in 17 years, I still have absolutely no doubt the series will return on Switch too. Why? But like I said, this series is ready for a brand new game, not just another remake. And the unfortunate downside to that is that Little Mac is retired. I don't want to compromise the ending of the last game, so we're gonna keep that intact. Instead, I want to go the Pikmin 4 route. The game opens with Doc Lewis several years after Mac's retirement. He's done his best with a few new trainees, but none of them have hit the big time like Mac. But of course, not being one to give up, Lewis keeps searching until he stumbles upon the player. You'll then be prompted to create your own character. The first part of this phase will be pretty basic, just picking your gender and look as per usual. But at the end, you'll make the most important decision of the game. Now, I may not know much about boxing, but I did watch this MatPat video from 8 years ago, which taught me about the 3 basic types of boxers. There are swarmers, outboxers, and brawlers. Picking between these 3 will determine your character's stats, as swarmers are known for getting in close and overwhelming their opponents with fast attacks, outboxers keep their distance and try to get off chip damage while avoiding their opponents, and brawlers are the hardest hitting of the 3, but they're also pretty slow. These are great character types to choose from as they translate perfectly into the world of video games. And once you're done with that, you'll be up against a whole new roster of characters. Almost. Glass Joe is my favorite, and I think that he's the perfect introduction to a game like this, so we're gonna keep him. But since this takes place a few years after his fight with Little Mac, he'll be redesigned to look kinda older. Outside of that though, all other opponents will be brand new. I know Punch-Out has faced some controversy for its depictions of stereotypes relating to different groups of people in the past, so the new fighters will completely do away with that design concept. Everyone still needs to have a little quirk though, so I think we can focus on different types of exaggerated personalities or obsessions that could theoretically apply to anyone. For example, the localization of Vodka Drunkinski as Soda Popinski is something you could model the design around. His obsession with soda pop is a lot less jarring and offensive than alcohol, and he could look like anything and still have a love for soda. Though a more accurate depiction might be someone who looks like me. And for my final idea, I think it would be awesome if after you roll the credits, you get a special boss fight with Little Mac. It'll be kinda like the Donkey Kong boss fight from Wii, but ideally it would hit much harder. One of my favorite tropes in gaming is when you get to fight against a protagonist you previously played as. Red in Pokemon Gold and Silver, Joker in Persona 3 Reload, and even Olimar in Pikmin 4. It's such a cool way to make the player feel accomplished, like they're better than they were when they played through the last game. Beating Mac would unlock New Game Plus, allowing you to go through the game again as either of the 2 boxer types you didn't pick before. This would offer insane replay value, which is something that I feel a lot of modern games sort of lack, but Punch-Out has always excelled in. I cannot for the life of me figure out why this series died out. All 5 entries sold pretty well, and the games are still very well regarded from a critical standpoint. But nonetheless, it's been 18 years. This one is easily the most likely to be revived on this list. In fact, rumor has it that a brand new game is on the horizon and will be released next year. We'll likely see if that's true sometime next month, but for the time being, there are a handful of things I think a new Wario Land has to get right. First and foremost, the characters. The Wario Land series lives on the outskirts of Mario's world, and therefore has some of the most interesting characters that Nintendo has to offer. I think Captain Syrup is a must for a returning antagonist, but beyond her, I'd like to see Wario's world fleshed out a bit more. Bringing in the characters from WarioWare would be a great way to do that, on top of potentially, finally, making Waluigi playable in multiplayer. I think I speak for everyone when I say that we would love to see him utilized outside of Mario sports games, and this is the perfect time to do it. Additionally, Wario Land Shake It has always stuck out to me for its gorgeous art style. Assuming this would be a 2D platformer, that would really help it differentiate itself from others on the system like Mario Wonder or Yoshi and the Mysterious Book. Finally, I think putting a greater emphasis on Wario's upgradable moveset would make this game feel that much more unique. Almost like a blend of a 2D platformer and a Metroidvania. In all likelihood, we'll see exactly what this game looks like very soon. But our final series is possibly one with the most demand backing its return. As I'm sure every other Nintendo YouTuber has told you by now, the company has consistently said that they just don't have a good concept to come back with, and that's something that's critical to the development of a new Nintendo game. Okay, well, maybe Nintendo just doesn't want another racer to compete with Mario Kart. Yeah, okay, I'm starting to see it. There is nothing holding them back from releasing a brand new F-Zero game. and there are a ton of modern features a new F-Zero could play around with, particularly online ones. I saw this idea circulating around that I believe was first introduced by YouTuber Streez, where players can create their own tracks and post them online Mario Maker style. I love this concept because it adds longevity and something to do in between the high-intensity races. But to be honest, just adding online races would be enough to keep people playing. I also think it's critical that Nintendo makes this game more accessible. I'm not suggesting they necessarily make it easier, but having a training mode set up more like the one in Kirby Air Riders would be very helpful. I think the series' brutal difficulty is a large part of its appeal, so I don't want to lose that, especially when it's on a console with so many other racers. Being the SMT to these games' Pokemon could serve as a great selling point. But at the same time, a side mode like this would serve as a decent compromise for new players. And finally, I think the overall gameplay should only receive minor changes. This is a classic case of if it ain't broke. But one idea I had to shake up the traditional gameplay is allowing the player to use their prize money to purchase vehicle upgrades throughout the campaign. It would help create a sense of progression beyond just the narrative and make way for a whole new system for different builds of your machines. I could see a little store menu like the trophy shop in Smash 4. You can use it as a way to purchase upgrades and equip the ones you like. Maybe even in Grand Prix mode and online, you could use your preset vehicle designs against CPUs and other players. But once again, I'm just spitballing here. I think the most important thing for the F-Zero franchise is that it does return, not necessarily how. And that could honestly be said for a lot of the series we've covered here today. I'll never understand Nintendo's decision to sit on so many IPs that are ripe for expansion. But I'm sure I've missed quite a few, so let me know in the comments down below how you might revive the series that we've listed today and which ones I might have missed. I'm sure there are plenty of Golden Sun fans just screaming at their screen right now, but I didn't want to suggest anything for that game because, to be completely honest, I haven't played it, so I don't really know how a revival would go, but maybe I'll check it out, and maybe I'll even make a part 2 if there's enough demand. Just, again, let me know. I want to give a special shout out to all my patrons who make these videos possible. If you're interested in joining the Patreon, you can check it out at the first link in the description down below, and as always, please remember, believe to achieve.